There is no simple definition for a curator. I believe that there are as many personalities as curators. Many people say that nowadays every individual curates, and that you curate your life, you curate your restaurants, you curate your friends. The curator has the role of welcoming visitors, so making something for the public. The show I'm currently preparing is inspired by scent. Scent is very much related to presence. And nowadays, where we all double ourselves with a digital presence, what does it mean to be physically here? I'm used to work with objects, and now I have to invite artists to produce what would be an online exhibition. The idea was to build a story and imagine or think about what would scent say if it had a voice. I get inspiration almost anywhere. I also find it a lot in the street, when I walk and when I think and when I look at the people around me. I also read a lot of material that has nothing to do with art. I read a lot of theory, philosophy and sociology, and then I look at astrophysics, from the way we grow plants to the headlines of the newspaper. I've got this big interest for football games. I'm really impressed by the power of crowds. I like to understand how do we manage or don't manage to create a collective group.
Maybe next to this.
I think I'm a concept-driven curator. It's almost like I have those questions and they're like burning desires to understand, to explore. And then I invite artists to kind of be my partners in crime. I think learning happens when we surround ourselves with things. And the same thing with art. I think the female creativity is about engaging in a more open way. So it's not vertical, it's horizontal, where you also let people be and bring in their strengths in their own capacity and then let it foster. I have been challenged with the digital media, or kind of trying to understand and tune in, what is digital art? Is it a form of translation that translates the physical into virtual domain?
For me, it's really always been having that crush on talent that drove me to the arts. The physical, the virtual, the overlap are issues that I talk about with my artistic director, Hans-Ulrich Obrist, each and every day. We're both obsessed with the way that we became a Pokemon stop this summer, for example, and that aspect enabled people to layer on their physical and their virtual experiences in ways that drew audiences that might not otherwise come. My goal really is to create a very safe space for unsafe ideas and be a very open landscape for potentially very opposing views. In the arts, of course, there are so many male directors, there are so many female curators, and whether you're male or female, I love to work with feminists, like the men in this organization who believe that a program should have a diversity of voice and texture. So for me, feminism isn't a male or female dimension. Feminism is for everyone.
One of the reasons I started Arcadia Missa was also out of naivety. Even though I grew up in London, I didn't really know that there were kind of smaller galleries. I only really knew there was the Tate and that, all of these big institutions that weren't necessarily speaking to me as a young person. In art, space can be a very unspoken, oppressive thing. Art is historically extremely white, extremely male, and institutions and the art world has built up over a long time based on that. Very much what we were doing at the start, we were doing because we didn't have any space to do it in and we didn't think anyone really cared, and a lot of it was we were our own audience. So you kind of have this teenage type of confidence where you're like, yeah, I'll just do it. And the fact that then that has grown obviously helps with being like, okay, maybe we do have something interesting to say.
Allô, Marguerite? Ouais. This digital project allows something that I've been always interested in, which is the possibility of art to exist somewhere else than in a museum. I invited artists who have very different type of work. The movie will start with Bridget Paul. She started in 2009 to do balancing rocks, and she manages through meditation to put together these impossible sculptures. So Bridget Paul's work is speaking about the ephemeral, about things that can collapse. As much as like scent is suddenly transporting you for a vision and escaping as soon as it appears. Cassandra Ninja is a very important figure in the voguing scene in Paris and was somebody extremely important to bring this subculture to France.
Et j'ai pris Cléopâtre. Cléopâtre est souvent vue comme comme une femme blanche, et c'est pas une femme blanche, c'est quand même une reine africaine, et surtout le parfum, puisque le parfum ça a quand même une connotation divine, surtout dans l'Égypte antique, et puis c'est quand même une technique, le parfum vient quand même de là. Donc surtout se réapproprier justement les techniques, les choses, même peut-être la senteur elle-même en elle-même.
And then you would discover the work of Marguerite Dumas, who's been interested in the question of when was love born and is it possible to reproduce attraction. All the sound has been done by DJ Powder, and that was very important for me as well to invoke music. The artists have the opportunity to play with their art in a way that they wouldn't have if I would put a physical show together. For most of them, it was very interesting to suddenly have a different relationship with their work. When I started curation, we started really as a kind of reaction against like what was frightening and what was threatening our future. How do I take back my life? How do I take back like my existence? And how do we live together collectively and we build something?
When we talk about Bufu, Bufu's by us, for us, right? Like, we are Black and Asian folks. We're talking about our own personal identities.
Anytime that we have an opportunity to curate something in a space, we try to consider what it means to welcome our community and these artists and organizations into that space, and what is the history of the neighborhood, what is the history of the institution. Something we're grappling with is if we are doing our curation in communities of color, now that we have more exposure, we automatically welcome a white gaze. And so when you are organizing in communities of color and suddenly all of these like white folks are coming in to have that experience, what does that mean? But at the same time, when you're asking people of color to come into these institutions that are traditionally white and violent and oppressive, how open and how safe can that really be? I don't think that we believe any space is truly safe, so we just strive to make them safer. So Thursday would be at Brooklyn Museum?
I guess so, yeah.
So BK Museum.
A lot of our histories have been stolen from us, erased from us, not taught to us. So a lot of this is about reclaiming those histories.
It's also rare that low-income, young, femme, queer, like trans folks of color get just space.
For me, curation is about creating a network and a web that like extends beyond what's possible. I aim to create a safe space or an environment where people feel respected and they feel like it's gonna have integrity.
What's really sweet is when someone peels you away.
They're sisters and I belong to them.
Power Plant is rooted in the whole idea that if you give someone access to tools to express themselves, that you have no idea what's even gonna come of that, but it's not your job to dictate what comes from it. It's just your job to trust that like magic will happen.
I always believe that An artwork has 10,000 existences depending on where it happens and where you show that work, in what context, and what kind of story is told about this work. And so what is it to show when you don't have to physically to go somewhere, and how you work through other senses, as scent does. The digital experience is an incredible tool for what it allows in terms of ubiquity, in terms of freedoms, in terms of investigation around the visual realm. Artists are not there to look at the world, they are challenging it, they are its rivals. Art and culture is a domain we need to protect and we need to fight for, because this is where we express how vast we are and how much related we are as well to each other.